Alright, so hi, welcome to Anchor Reviews.
And the Big Steve, or Steven.
Yes, it's Tyler from Anchor Reviews, and this is our review on Godzilla X Kong the New Empire. It's hard to believe the Monsterverse is 10 years old this year.
That is hard to believe, man. Wow.
Yeah, I know, and this is the 5th movie in the Monsterverse, and of course there are other TV shows related to it, such as Monarch Legacy of Monsters, as well as that animated Kong show on Netflix. I haven't watched that other one.
Nor have I.
Okay, I keep forgetting about it. I don't really have Netflix, but the thing is, with the Monsterverse, what I like about it compared to other cinematic universes, unlike the MCU, which has really overstayed its welcome, or the DC EU that really had no direction, Godzilla X Kong, the Monsterverse is interesting because they don't oversaturate the market. They have interesting ideas, and plus they like to take their time with it. They don't overspend on the budget on these things because they typically are less than 200 million. Although I do think this new one is at least 200 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it definitely does. I would say a better job and more sustainable, at least for the time being. We'll see as things go on, but I also haven't seen the Netflix Kong show, and so far so good. That's all I've got to say.
All right, and at the end, after we give our ratings, we'll like to rank what we think are from the worst to best of the Monsterverse movies. So it's about 10 years, so I think it'd be fitting. So Godzilla X Kong New Empire takes place a few years after the events of Godzilla vs. Kong, where Kong happens to come across more of the Hollow Earth and finds out there's more of his own species further down into the Hollow Earth. However, it turns out that they have a very evil leader known as the Scar King, and he wants to get back onto the surface world to fight Godzilla as the ancient, Kong-like species fought in the ancient times. And also, we have some of the other cast members back as well, such as Rebecca Hall's character, and also Brian Trey Henry as the Bernie, podcast character. But what was weird about Rebecca is that, at least that Rebecca Hall's character, is that her hair was blonde and short. I thought she was a completely different actress when I saw that trailer. I'm like, oh wait, that's the same actress? That's odd. But so anyway, what did you think of Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire?
I enjoyed it. It was honestly, coming into this from Godzilla versus Kong the first time, I kind of felt like, okay, this is overall going to be like a fantastical but dumb beat 'em up type of situation, and it was a little more than that. I mean, that definitely was still very present, but I was pleased, without spoiling things, that they were able to kind of incorporate the Hollow Earth, bring in a lot more of the world building that was present in things like King of the Monsters, which, spoiler, is my favorite of the Monsterverse at this point. And so it was welcome to see more of that world building back. And I definitely think things like the humor and the overall narrative was a bit better. I'm not actually... I can't confidently say I would say that the action in this movie was quite up to par with even the previous, but there were different issues with that one, which were more like there was too much time with the humans. It kind of lingered in places where it didn't need to. So I think this film did a much better job at pacing the story, contributing something, as opposed to kind of just humans meandering around and murmuring back and forth about conspiracies until the slugfest at the end. And for that matter, I would say Scar King, who was the villain of this film, at least, or rival, I guess you could say, because a lot of these creatures do not have the sort of villain intelligence or trope. It is big slugfest. But I will say that the build up to it was pretty solid. The new Titans we got to see were good and contributed to the story in a way I thought was helpful. And I honestly would have liked to see Godzilla a bit more in this movie. That is one thing that like this one and Godzilla versus Kong feel, for understandable reasons with the audience, a little Kong slanted, and I get that, but it was also I being a Godzilla fan a bit more. I think I would have liked to see just a bit more of him, his involvement throughout the story. But in any case, I enjoyed it. It was a good time. It was fun. Definitely would recommend seeing it at least once in theaters. And I'm sure we'll give the review breakdowns and overall what we think shortly. But I definitely think it was a bit of a tighter film this time around.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I do agree with a lot of what you're saying that, and I noticed too, like just like Godzilla versus Kong, that this one is definitely more of Kong's story, and Godzilla's pretty secondary as well. I just hope that whenever they make another movie in the Monsterverse, hopefully it's Godzilla's movie next time because he hasn't had his own movie in a while. And yeah, for me, I really did enjoy this one actually more than Godzilla vs. Kong because I did rewatch that movie recently on HBO Max, and there were a lot of moments in that movie where I'm like, things are just super convenient just to move this plot along. And it's like, wait a minute, that happened and this happened, like especially the Wi-Fi transfer of that element to power Mechagodzilla, which was, yeah, a little too convenient, I would say. That was, yeah, very fast. And the thing is, with this movie too, I mean, it's mostly fun, but I was enjoying myself watching it because the humor felt a little bit more natural and planned. It wasn't like the MCU where they tend to like go too much improv humor, where the jokes will really overtake things too much. And also, another actor that I remember also saying out of this movie was Trapper. Well, character was Trapper, played by Dan Stevens. And I think he's just very enjoyable, very entertaining, and really in line with the tone of this movie, which I did enjoy. And I noticed looking at the cast right now, only a handful of people from at least Godzilla vs. Kong are back in this one. Everyone else is either a fresh face or no one really recognizable to mainstream audiences because it's definitely more of a monster movie, which I did enjoy. And it's definitely a very fun, enjoyable monster mash. We'll get into like spoilers later to talk more into details about that. But yeah, I mean, in ways I kind of saw a little bit of the campiness of the Joel Schumacher Batman Robin movie a little bit at times because we do have this Titan that does have Mr. Freeze-esque powers. And I was remembering some of those ice puns. And then even the lighting towards the end of the movie, I don't know if you remember Batman Robin, but the moment where the morning comes and Alfred's all fine and the lighting of it being like kind of pinkish, purplish in that. One of the last scenes in this movie has a very similar lighting in that movie in this one too. So I felt like those just a odd coincidence to me, and just seeing the title as well as Godzilla vs. Kong, I got a little bit of Batman Robin vibe from it in ways, in positive ways, I would say. But yeah, the audience really enjoyed stuff, and there were some unexpected, hilarious moments. Well, again, not trying to spoil anything that I thought were pretty funny in that. But should we get into spoilers then?
Is there anything you wanted to talk about, like with the cast first or something? Like just generally before we get into spoiler territory, or
I mean, maybe one last thing about Rebecca Hall, because I remember years ago there was a trailer I mentioned for a movie called The Night House.
Oh yeah,
that she was in. And did you see that one yet?
I did.
What'd you think of it?
I thought that was okay. Yeah, there was a couple. That was the one that was horror, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall there was like one. It wasn't like a jump scare moment, but for me it was kind of like that was pretty good. But overall, I thought it was kind of just fine, mediocre.
For me, I liked the first act. The second act became kind of generic drama mystery from the 2000s. But then there's some twist in the third act that I think kind of saves it for me. And so I would say it's one of the more overlooked, kind of underrated movies of the 2020s so far, just like The Empty Man, I think is an underrated horror movie that sadly is overlooked. I don't know if you knew this, but that's one of those rare mainstream Hollywood movies that came out in the past several years that never got a home video release.
That's true. And I mean, the balls of that movie to have a 20-minute prologue scene.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do not see many that are able to commit to that, let alone that it works. And it definitely did. So I agree with you. Empty Man is great.
Okay. So we're going to get into spoilers here. Just fast forward to this part if you don't want to be spoiled. So anyway, the moments, well, the reason why I didn't want to spoil this stuff because it's hilarious. So there were some unexpected hilarious moments, not just with like, so there's a moment where we have this like little Kong, I guess, the closest to Son of Kong, which is Edgar Wright. Sorry, I mean, not Edgar Wright,
Yeah.
the Baby Driver director.
It's just literally Edgar Wright in a big monkey suit. Yeah, that's right.
Simon Pegg and Nick Frost shenanigans.
Yeah, Nick Frost was Shimo with the last name,
Yeah. Yeah, and some random zombies show up, and all right, so then that would explain some of the music plugins they have, the little drop move moments. But there was this unexpected, hilarious moment where Kong is fighting other people's species, including the little Kong, and he like grabs him and fuses him like a baseball bat or something.
It's like those memes. It says when you're so mad you want to just throw an MF at another MF, and it's like. That's literally what he did, though. Like, he just took a child and beat adult apes with it. Like,
yeah, I mean, this movie is kind of, in my opinion, it's like borderline rated R because there's some decapitated heads and some bodies getting torn apart, and I'm like, even though it's not human blood, it's like, man, this is a pretty graphic for a movie that, for this tone, is being a little, tongue in cheek in ways. But also, too, what I appreciate about this movie, too, especially the marketing, is that they did not spoil other giant monsters that are in this movie. I mean, obviously, we know who the Scar King is in this movie, and probably saw some ads for, like, Shimu, the, Ice Titan character. However, there's other giant monsters that do appear. One of them was in King of the Monsters, that spider-looking creature. And then some other new Titan we never heard of that Godzilla fights as well. In the North Sea, no, not North Sea, the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean, and then
Tiamat.
Yeah, and then of course I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm happy they didn't spoil this. Was that it was nice to see the return of Mothra.
That was very nice and unexpected, and kind of justified the deaf girl, the last of the Skull Island tribe, being there. I liked how they brought that in and played with the gravitational forces in the Hollow Earth. That was very cool.
Yeah, that was a very fun scene. I really like that. That'd be interesting to see that in 3D. I mean, it makes sense why her and other characters are in it, but looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, I mean, as much as I would like to have seen, let's say, Kyle Chandler's character or Millie Bobby Brown's character from some of the other movies in this one, it makes sense why they're not in it, because they really would have nothing to do.
That's very true.
And then we get to this really cool, like, 2-on-2 monster fight between Godzilla and Kong versus the Scar King and Tizmu in Rio, Brazil.
Rio de Janeiro, yep.
Yeah, like that Duran Duran song. But yeah, the thing is, that was very fun, very action-packed. I like how it lasted longer than the fight between Godzilla and Kong versus Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, I will say, though, this may be a hot take, but I actually preferred that fight in the grand scheme of things, because I think it really established that basically Mechagodzilla could not have been defeated alone. Like, if he versed either Kong or Godzilla, they would have been killed. But because they were together, they were able to win. And this time, it really just felt like, when you learn how Scar King is controlling, that's the big thing that I feel like undercut it, was that Scar King was controlling Shimu. That once that was eliminated from the picture, the fight's over. It's completely one-sided. It doesn't matter as much. And that was a little anticlimactic for me. I could see maybe they're trying to save Shimo for, what if we have Destroya or some even bigger threat down the road. But to me, it kind of just felt like this. Shimo should have been as big, if not the bigger threat in the film. And that was kind of just a wasted opportunity. Like it made sense, I guess, that Scar King was manipulating, but it ultimately undercut it. Where I think Mechagodzilla, despite the failures in the story overall, with the human characters, I think it worked better for a big kaiju fight, in just that one area. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. Yeah, the thing is, I did enjoy the fight scenes, how grand they were, and I felt like there was definitely more giant monster action in this one than, of course, in the previous movie in the Monsterverse. I did like the Scar King as an antagonist. You can tell that unlike other giant monster characters where they're either based on instinct, this one you could tell that he was conniving and very sinister in his way because does have a higher intelligence compared to, like, so let's say King Ghidorah or one of the Mutos from the 2014 Godzilla, or even any of the Skrull Crawlers from Kong Skull Island. Mm-hmm. And yeah, or well, back Godzilla too, because he's just following orders and also a mental extension of King Ghidorah as well. But yeah, this one was very enjoyable. I had a fun time with it. So, what would you give Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire?
That is a tough one. I still haven't ultimately settled, and I think on a second viewing, which I'm sure I'll do at some point, it could definitely change. But I would probably... The action was decent, but I would argue a little less good than Kong versus Godzilla. The story was better. The world building was better. But all in all, I would probably settle in the range of maybe an 81 to 83% for a grade for it. Because it was good for what it was. It was fun entertainment. But there were a couple marks that this genre, at its best, hits. And for me, it was like, it came close, but didn't quite fully scratch the itch. Like something like King of the Monsters would, or some other films. So ultimately, I enjoyed it, but I think that's a fitting grade.
Yeah. Well, personally, for me, I felt like the humor was better in this movie compared to the 2004. Sorry, compared to there's no humor in 2014's Godzilla.
Yeah.
Well, barely, but you know what I mean. I meant to say Godzilla versus Kong. And also, too, I felt like the story flowed better. There wasn't as many moments where I'm like, okay, well, that's convenient. Just like Godzilla versus Kong, there were a lot of moments where, for me, where I was like, yeah, there's like moments where I'm like, okay, that's just pure convenient, and that's, just to get the plot flowing.
I do want to mention one before you give your grade on that just came to mind in this moment. They just happened. They lost connection with the top side, the overworld. And it just so happened that the cast that they could give Kong to heal his arm with no one additionally to help, no additional resources, just happened to be at the one place nearest in Hollow Earth that they were. And it's like, that to me felt very like, okay, this felt like the equivalent of...
Yeah, I get you. It's just that I felt like it was more noticeable and happened more frequently in the previous one than this one.
That's fair.
It just felt like, it was like, it felt like, okay, one big that's convenient versus a bunch of several other conveniences. But yeah, for me, I do enjoy it as what it is. And I mean, yeah, this is easily a movie you can label as like, it's definitely like series 1 of the Godzilla movies. Very much, yeah, very fun movie. Go into that, have a fun time. And I know people will complain about like, oh, we want it to be like serious, like Godzilla -1. And yeah, Godzilla -1 is a great movie. But the thing is that I'm just so happy we're getting so much Godzilla. We get a lot of variety. You get the serious, well-made Godzilla movie from Japan, and you get the very fun American Godzilla movies that have been coming out recently.
Agreed.
So yeah, I don't see why people complain. You get a lot of Godzilla in movies. So for me, Godzilla X Kong and the New Empire, fun. I mean, yeah, I like to see more Godzilla. Hopefully he gets his own movie. And yeah, I do agree with some of the critiques that, Steven had with the movie, some of the negative stuff about it. But I did have a good time with this one. I slightly preferred over Godzilla versus Kong. So as for Godzilla X Kong and the New Empire, I keep messing it up here. I would give this movie about 3 stars out of 4. Pretty solid. Maybe it could go up or down. Maybe down like later as I think about more throughout the years. Because keep in mind, when I review a movie, it's never truly set in stone. Just keep that in mind, folks. So before we wrap things up, where would you rank the Monsterverse movies from worst to best? The 5 movies.
I haven't actually stopped to think that, so this could also change with time. But definitely at the very top is Godzilla King of the Monsters. That one to me is what all of the movies should be aspiring to be at their best. Good human villains, good, notable kaiju rival, and big cataclysms and a big world building with team ups, that sort of thing. I would probably put, oh man, this is tough and controversial, but I would either put Godzilla versus Kong or this movie next. They're kind of neck and neck to me. I might have to give this one just a slight leg up story-wise. But again, I much prefer the action in the previous to this film. So I know Tyler and I may disagree on that, but it's one of those two, and then the other one in the next slot. Then I would probably say Godzilla 2014 and then Kong Skull Island. That's probably what I would rank it.
Okay. So for me, the worst to best, I would say the worst one is Godzilla 2014 because I felt like it was kind of boring, not enough Godzilla action in this movie. I do kind of explain in a previous video of mine. I liked it a lot when I first saw it in theaters. When I rewatched it 5 years later, I'm like, this is boring, this is kind of a drag. And I get why people like it more in recent years because it was more of a serious Godzilla movie like Godzilla Minus One was. So above that one, I would put Kong Skull Island. I feel like it was a little bit better in ways, but there's a little bit some oddly placed humor. And then above that one, I would put Godzilla vs. Kong, where I feel like it was enjoyable, kind of dumb fun in a way. Just like how Godzilla x Kong New Empire put that a little bit higher on it. I just feel like the story's a little bit thought out more. I did like the scenes with Kong and the kiddish Kong character. Was nice interaction where you could tell what they were thinking and feeling without any dialogue. And for me, Godzilla King of the Monsters is my favorite of the bunch because I think it was a nice balance between the fun and serious stuff. Just like part of the reason why X-Men First Class is my favorite X-Men movie is that it knew when to have fun, but it also knew when to be serious at times. It had its own unique style and had substance to it. So that's where I would rank the Monsterverse movies for now, from worst to best. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, I guess I could say that, kind of agreeing with you that this film really did serve, in a lot of ways, as a very Son of Kong type of film with how much the great apes were involved. And I honestly, like, if they made a Son of Kong film in addition to this, I would almost say it's redundant because of how heavily involved that sort of surrogate son factor was in this film. But I agree with you, and it was a fun time.
Okay. So anyway, this is Tyler from Anchor Reviews.
And the Big Steve, or Steven Lawson.
Yes, we hope you enjoyed this episode of After the Credits on Anchor Reviews. And we hope to make a lot more in the future. Please like and subscribe. Oh, by the way, Steven, I forgot to ask you. In this situation where we were Godzilla and Kong, who do you think we would be?
That's a good question. Well, I will say this.
I could answer that for you.
What do you think?
I don't know. I think I'd be Kong because I'm hairier than you, but...
That's fair. That's fair. I was going to say maybe Godzilla because I eat more and I can make weird noises.
Okay.
But that's all I can figure. But.
Yeah, okay. That's nice we agree on that, too. All right, so anyway, please like and subscribe.